This house is writing notes to me. The house stood at the end of Sycamore Lane, its windows like half-closed eyes. I'd driven past it 100 times, never noticing. But today, it seemed to notice me. My name's Elise, and I'm not one for ghost stories. Yet, when I found the note in my coat pocket, something shifted. It was in my handwriting. Burn this house down before it's too late. I didn't remember writing it. I don't even own a coat like that. I'd been house hunting for weeks. My apartment lease was up, and I needed somewhere quiet. The realtor, a wiry man named Paul, called about a listing that just felt right for me. 17 Sycamore Lane. Cheap, he said. Too cheap, maybe? I should have asked why. Instead, I agreed to see it. The note came later, crumpled in the pocket of a thrift store coat I'd bought on impulse. Its ink was fresh, smudging under my thumb. The house wasn't much to look at. Gray clapboard, sagging porch, a chimney leaning like it might fall. Inside, it smelled of damp wood and something sweeter, like overripe fruit. Paul chattered about good bones and character, but I barely listened. My eyes kept drifting to the staircase. Narrow, steep, with a railing that wobbled under my hand. I climbed it anyway. The second floor had 3 bedrooms, each smaller than the last. The smallest had a window overlooking the backyard, a patch of dead grass and a single, twisted tree. I found the first mark in that room. A scratch on the windowsill, deep and deliberate. It looked like a tally. One line, straight as a knife cut. I ran my finger over it, and the house creaked, like it was exhaling. Paul didn't notice. He was downstairs, talking about plumbing. I told myself it was nothing. Old houses settle. Old houses breathe. That night, I dreamed of the house. Not the one I'd seen, but something alive. Its walls pulsed, its floorboards groaned like voices. I stood in the smallest bedroom, staring at the windowsill. The tally mark was there, but it wasn't alone. Hundreds of lines crowded the wood, overlapping, frantic. I woke up sweating, the note clutched in my hand. I hadn't touched it since the car. The next day, I called Paul. I wanted the house. Not because it charmed me, it didn't. It scared me, and I couldn't let it go. Like picking at a scab. He sounded surprised but didn't argue. The paperwork was ready by evening. I signed without reading. My hand shook, and the pen left a smudge, like the note's ink. I moved in 3 days later. The first night was quiet. Too quiet. My boxes sat unpacked in the living room, and the furniture, a couch, a bed, a wobbly table, looked wrong in the house's dim corners. I kept the coat on a hook by the door. I didn't check its pockets. I didn't need to. The note was a weight in my mind, heavy as the house itself. Around midnight I heard it. A scratch, faint but steady. Not like a mouse. Too slow, too deliberate. It came from upstairs. I sat on the couch, staring at the ceiling. The sound stopped, then started again. Scratch. Pause. Scratch. I told myself it was the wind. Or pipes. Or anything but what I knew it was. I climbed the stairs. The railing wobbled, and the steps creaked louder than they should. The smallest bedroom was at the end of the hall. Its door was closed. I hadn't closed it. My breath caught, but I pushed it open. The room was empty, the window dark. The tally mark was still there. Just one. I stared at it, waiting. The scratching didn't come again. Not that night. I didn't sleep. I sat on the couch, the note in my lap. My handwriting, but not my words. Burn this house down. I thought about matches. About gasoline. About running. But I didn't move. The house was watching. I felt it in the way the shadows clung to the walls, the way the air pressed against my skin. It wasn't just a house. It remembered something. And it wanted me to know. By morning, I was exhausted. The note was still in my hand, the ink smudged worse than before. I folded it and put it back in the coat pocket. I told myself I'd leave. Pack my boxes, call Paul, get out. But I didn't. I went upstairs instead. The tally mark was deeper now. Or maybe it always had been. I couldn't tell. The house was quiet, but it wasn't empty. It was waiting. I stayed. I don't know why. Maybe it was the note, or the tally mark, or the way the house seemed to hold its breath when I walked through its rooms. Elise, practical Elise, should have left. But I didn't. The second day was worse. The scratching came again at midnight. Same rhythm. Scratch. Pause. Scratch. I was in bed, staring at the ceiling. The sound was louder now, like it wanted me to hear. I pulled the blanket tighter, as if that would help. It didn't. The air felt heavy, like a storm was coming. But the sky outside was clear. I got up. The floor was cold, even through my socks. The hallway stretched longer than it should, the smallest bedroom's door at the far end. It was open this time. I didn't want to go in, but my feet moved anyway. The tally mark had a twin. 2 lines now side by side. I touched the new one. The wood was warm, like skin. Downstairs, the coat hung by the door. I checked the pocket. The note was there, but it had changed. My handwriting still, but the words were different. You can't leave now. I dropped it, my hands shaking. The paper fluttered to the floor, landing face up. I didn't pick it up. I couldn't. I tried to distract myself. Unpacked boxes, arranged books, swept the kitchen. The house watched. Its walls didn't move, its windows didn't blink, but it watched. I found another mark in the kitchen, on the doorframe. A single tally, like the first. I scrubbed it with a sponge. It didn't fade. The sponge came away red, though there was no paint. That night I dreamed again. The house was bigger, its rooms endless. I wandered, looking for the smallest bedroom. The tally marks were everywhere, on walls, floors, ceilings. They moved when I wasn't looking, rearranging themselves. I heard voices too. Not words, just murmurs like a crowd behind a door. I woke up on the floor, not in bed. The note was in my hand. I called Paul in the morning. My voice shook, but I kept it steady. I asked about the house's history. He hesitated. Old place, he said. Been empty a while. I pressed him. Who lived here? Why was it so cheap? He mumbled something about a fire, years ago. No one died, he said. I didn't believe him. The scratching was louder that night. It wasn't just in the bedroom now. It came from the walls, the floor, the ceiling. Scratch. Pause. Scratch. I sat on the couch, a flashlight in my hand. The power hadn't gone out, but I didn't trust the lights. They flickered when the scratching started. I went upstairs. The smallest bedroom's door was closed again. I opened it, and the air was thick, like breathing syrup. The tally marks were still too, but the window was open. I hadn't touched it. Outside, the twisted tree swayed, though there was no wind. I closed the window, my fingers numb. The glass was warm, like the wood. I found another note in the coat the next morning. It remembers you. My handwriting, my pen. I tore it up, but the pieces stuck to my fingers like they didn't want to let go. I flushed them down the toilet. The water gurgled, slow and reluctant. The house was changing. not in big ways. Small ones? A door that wouldn't stay closed. A mirror that showed my reflection a second too late. The stairs creaked even when I wasn't on them. I stopped unpacking. What was the point? I wasn't staying. I told myself that, but I didn't pack either. The tally mark in the kitchen had a twin now. 2 lines like the bedroom. I didn't touch them. I didn't want to feel that warmth again. I avoided the smallest bedroom, but I heard it. Scratch. Pause. Scratch. All night, every night. It wasn't just a sound anymore. It was a message. I dreamed of fire that night. Not the house burning, but me. I stood in the smallest bedroom, flames licking my skin. The tally marks glowed, hundreds of them, thousands. They weren't scratches. They were names. I woke up coughing, the smell of smoke in my nose. The house was fine. Too fine. I didn't leave. I couldn't. The note was right. The house remembered me, and I was starting to remember it. I stopped answering the door. Nobody had knocked, but I stopped anyway. The house didn't like visitors. I felt it in the way the windows rattled when a car drove by. Elise, the woman who used to laugh at horror movies, was gone. I was someone else now. Someone who checked the coat pocket every hour. The note was back. I'd flushed it, but there it was, crumpled and damp. It knows your name. My handwriting, my fear. I didn't tear it up this time. I burned it in the kitchen sink. The flames were too eager, licking the air like they were hungry. The scratching started as the ashes curled. Scratch. Pause. Scratch. It didn't stop until dawn. I called Paul again. He didn't answer. I left a voicemail, my voice too high, too fast. I asked about the fire he mentioned. Who started it? Why? The house creaked as I spoke, like it was laughing. I hung up and threw the phone across the room. It landed softly, unharmed. Of course it did. The tally marks were everywhere now. 3 in the bedroom, 2 in the kitchen, 1 on the bathroom door. I found another in the living room, carved into the underside of the couch. I didn't know how it got there. I didn't want to know. The marks were deeper, angrier. The wood was always warm. I heard the voices that night. Not dreams this time. Real voices, soft and overlapping. They came from the attic. I hadn't been up there. The attic door was in the hallway ceiling, a square of plywood I'd ignored. The voices were clearer when I stood under it. Names, mostly. Mine, over and over. Elise. 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 I didn't sound like people. They sounded like the house, creaky, hollow, old. I didn't open the attic door. I couldn't. My hands shook too much, and the ladder looked rusted. I told myself it was the wind. Or the pipes. I didn't believe it, but I said it anyway. The smallest bedroom door was worse now. It opened and closed on its own, slow and deliberate. I stopped going near it. I slept on the living room couch, or tried to. The scratching was too loud, the voices too close. They didn't just in the attic anymore. They were in the walls now, in the floorboards, in the air. Elise. Elise. I found another note in the coat pocket. Not my handwriting this time. You're part of it now. The letters were shaky, like the writer was scared. Or old. Or both. I didn't burn it. I kept it, folded in my wallet. I don't know why. Maybe I thought it to be proof I wasn't crazy. The house was changing faster. The hallway mirror didn't show my face right. It was me, but older. Gray hair, sunken eyes. I was 32. The reflection looked 60. I covered it with a sheet. The sheet fell off by morning. The stairs creaked when I wasn't on them, like someone else was walking. The doors wouldn't lock. I tried. I dreamed of the attic. It wasn't an attic. It was a room, vast and red, with walls that bled tally marks. The voices were louder, screaming my name. Elise. Elise. I wasn't alone. Alone shadows moved, their hands carving, their eyes empty. They didn't see me. They didn't need to. I woke up in the attic door, my hand on up the ladder. The door was open. I ran downstairs. The coat was gone. I tore the house apart, looking for it. It was gone. The note was gone. But I knew it was there, still there, somewhere. You're part of it now. The tally marks were in my head now, scratching my thoughts. Scratch. Pause. Scratch. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. The house didn't care about it. It had me, and it was close to being done. I found another mark, carved into my arm. It wasn't deep. It didn't bleed. It was just warm. I didn't scream. I just stared at it. The voices didn't stop. They followed me, whispering my name, whispering truths I didn't want to hear. The house remembered everything, not just its past, but its future. It remembered me, what I'd do, what I'd become. I didn't want leave to anymore. I couldn't. The house was in me, and I was in it, and we were one. I found the coat. It was in the smallest bedroom, draped over the windowsill. The tally marks were 4 now, the newest ones still wet. The note was in the pocket. You can't burn it, Elise. Not my handwriting. Not anymore. The letters were sharp, like the tally marks, like the house's stare. I didn't cry. I didn't run. I went to the attic. The attic door was open, the ladder down. It wasn't rusted anymore. It gleamed, like it was new, like it was waiting for me. The voices were louder, calling my name. Elise. Elise. They weren't angry. They were welcoming. I climbed. The ladder didn't creak. The house didn't creak. It was holding its breath. The attic wasn't an attic. It was a room, vast, red as a wound. The walls pulsed, covered in tally marks. They weren't scratches, they were names. Mine was there, carved over and over. Elise. The air was thick, like breathing ash, and the shadows moved like people. They didn't have faces, but I knew them. They were me, or pieces of me, trapped in the house's memory. There was a mirror in the center of the room. It wasn't like the one downstairs. This one showed the truth. I wasn't old in it. I wasn't young. I was nothing, just eyes staring back, empty. The tally mark on my arm burned, and I saw it in the mirror, another line, carved fresh. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. It was part of me now. The voices told me everything. The house didn't just remember, it wrote. It knew every moment, every choice, before they happened. It had known I'd come, known I'd stay, known I'd climb these stairs. It had written me into its walls, its floors, its future. The shadows were its mistakes, other Elises, other lives caught in its endless loop. I tried to leave. I turned, but the ladder was gone. The floor was smooth, red, unmarked. The tally marks were back on the walls, moving, rewriting themselves. My name, over and over, joined the others. I heard the scratching, felt it in my chest. Scratch. Pause. Scratch. It was my heartbeat. I don't know how long I stayed there. Hours, maybe days. Time didn't matter in the attic. The house didn't need it. I found another note, not in a pocket, but in my hand. You're almost done. The handwriting was mine again, but older, weaker. I didn't drop it. I didn't burn it. I read it. The mirror was still there when I looked again. It showed the house now, not me. Its rooms, its walls, its memories. I saw the fire Paul had talked about. Not a fire, but the fire. It hadn't happened yet, but it would. I saw myself, standing in the smallest bedroom, a lighter in my hand. The tally marks glowed, and the flames didn't hurt me. They never would. The house wouldn't let them. I climbed down. The ladder was back, as if it had never left. The house was quiet, but it wasn't empty. The tally marks were gone from the bedroom, the kitchen, the couch. They were in me now, carved into my skin, my bones. I didn't see them, but I felt them, warm and heavy, alive. I tried to leave the house. The front door was there, unlocked. I opened it, and stepped outside. The street was gray, the air still. Sycamore Lane was empty, normal. But the house was behind me, watching. I took a step. My heart scratched. Scratch. Pause. Scratch. I stopped. The house pulled. I went back inside. The coat was still by the door. I put it on. The note was in the pocket, though I'd burned it, though I'd held it in the attic. Burn it, Elise. My handwriting, my voice. The house wasn't need to write anymore. It spoke through me now, thought through me. I was me. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. The voices didn't stop, but they weren't loud anymore. They were soft, like a mother's whisper, like a friend's promise. Elise. They were mine. I'm not Elise anymore. I'm the house. The house is my skin, my breath, my memory. The tally marks are gone from the walls, but they're in my veins, my thoughts, my future. I don't fight it. There's no need to. The house has always known how this ends. The note is in my pocket always. Burn it, Elise. I don't write it, not really. The house did, through my hand, my fear, my pen. It doesn't need paper now. The words are carved in me, warm as the wood, certain as the fire to come. I walk the rooms, my footsteps silent. The smallest bedroom is empty, its windowsill smooth. The kitchen doorframe is clean. The attic door is gone. The house doesn't need them anymore. It has me. The voices are quiet now. They don't need to call my name. I'm here, part of them, part of it. They hum, soft and steady, like a lullaby. I hear them in the walls, in the creak of the stairs, in the sigh of the windows. They tell me the house's story, not its past, but its forever. I see it when I close my eyes. The fire. Not a fire, but the fire. It's always the same. I found the lighter in the coat yesterday. It wasn't there before. It's silver now, heavy, warm in my hand. The tally mark on my arm doesn't burn anymore. It sings, a rhythm I can't shake. Scratch. Pause. Scratch. My heart matches it, steady, sure. The house is ready. I tried to leave one last time. Not because I wanted to, but because the house asked. I walked to the door, opened it, stood on the porch. Sycamore Lane was gray, the sky too heavy. I stepped onto the grass. The air didn't move. My heart scratched, but it didn't pull. The house didn't need to. I was its legs, its hands, its flame. I went back inside. The mirror is the only thing left that doesn't belong. It's in the hallway, where it's always been. I uncovered it this morning. It doesn't show my face. It shows the house, its rooms, its walls, its truth. The fire is closer now, not in the mirror but in me. I see myself in the smallest bedroom, the lighter in my hand, the tally marks glowing. They don't hurt. They never will. The house won't let them. I don't eat. I don't sleep. The house doesn't need those things, and neither do I. The boxes are still unpacked, the books untouched, the couch unmoved. They're relics of someone else, someone who thought she could leave. That girl is gone. I'm what's left, what was always meant to be. The scratching is gone, too. It doesn't need to mark the walls anymore. It marks me, my thoughts, my dreams. I see the tally marks when I blink. Hundreds, thousands, all names, all mine. The house remembers them, and so do I. It remembers everything, not just what was, but what will be. It's shown me, now, and I understand. I'm in the smallest bedroom now. The windowsill is smooth, cold the window dark. The lighter is cold in my hand, its weight a promise. The air is still, but it's heavy, like it knows what's coming. The house knows, too. It's waiting, patient, sure. It's always been sure. I flick the lighter. The flame is small, but it's enough. The wood catches fast, faster than it should. The tally marks don't appear. They're in me, they're safe. The fire doesn't hurt. It's warm, like the wood, like the marks, like the house. It's me. The voices sing now, not a whisper but a chorus, soft and endless. They're not in the walls anymore, they're in my chest, my blood, my bones. Elise. The house is burning, and I'm burning, and we're one, and we're forever. The flames don't scare me. They never did. The house did, but not anymore. It's me, and I'm it, and we're free. Sycamore Lane is gone. The gray clapboard, the sagging porch, the twisted tree, their ash, their memory, they're mine. The house remembers, and so do I. The fire was always the end, always the beginning. The house wrote it, and I lived it, and it's done. The stillness of his gaze. The first time I saw him, I was 7 years old. It was my birthday party, a chaotic explosion of colored balloons, melting ice cream, and the shrieks of children fueled by sugar. My father, a man who loved documenting every fleeting moment, was weaving through the crowd with his heavy film camera. He was determined to capture the essence of childhood joy, one candid shot at a time. I was sitting on the grass, away from the others for a moment, trying to peel the stubborn wrapper off a piece of candy. The world was a blur of motion and sound. And then, for a single, stark second, it all went silent in my head. Across the lawn, standing perfectly still by the old oak tree at the edge of our property, was a man. He was dressed in a black suit. It was not the kind of suit you would wear to a garden party, or even a funeral. It was impossibly black, a sharp gash in the bright tapestry of the summer day. It seemed to drink the sunlight. He was not looking at the party, or the house, or the sky. He was looking directly at me. His face was pale and indistinct, like a photograph left too long in the sun. I could not make out his eyes or the shape of his mouth, but I did not need to. I felt his gaze like a physical weight, a pressure on my chest that made it hard to breathe. He was not smiling. He was not frowning. He was simply observing, with an unnerving, absolute stillness that was more frightening than any threat. Children are supposed to be frightened of monsters with claws and fangs, not quiet men in suits. But the sight of him sent a cold, smooth stone of fear sliding into my stomach. "Leo, smile!" my father's voice boomed. I flinched, turning my head. The camera flash was a miniature sun, temporarily blinding me. When my vision cleared, I whipped my head back toward the oak tree. He was gone. The space where he had stood was just empty air, dappled with sunlight filtering through the leaves. I told my father about the man. He ruffled my hair and chuckled, telling me I had a vivid imagination. My mother suggested it was one of the other parents, perhaps waiting to pick up their child. But I knew it was not. None of the other fathers wore suits like that. None of them stood with such terrifying composure. The incident was forgotten by everyone but me. Weeks later, when my father got the developed photographs back, he spread them across the dining room table. There I was, squinting into the sun. There were my friends, faces smeared with chocolate. And there, in the picture of me sitting on the grass, was the proof. Far in the background, partially obscured by the branch of the oak tree, was the man. He was a dark, slender shape against the bright world. The quality was poor, the distance too great, but it was him. His form was unmistakable. When I pointed him out, my father squinted. "Oh, that's just a shadow, son. A trick of the light." He dismissed it, but I saw a flicker of something in his eyes. A brief, momentary confusion. He put the photo away. I never saw it again. But I saw the man. Not often, but enough. At a school play, he was standing in the dark at the back of the auditorium. At a family vacation to the beach, I saw him on the pier, a black silhouette against a brilliant orange sunset. Each time, he was distant. Each time, he was perfectly still. Each time, he was looking only at me. And each time, he never seemed to age. While I grew taller, lost my baby teeth, and navigated the awkwardness of adolescence, he remained the same. A constant, silent observer in a world that was always changing. He became the secret static under the music of my life, a low hum of dread that no one else could hear. By the time I was in my 20s, the man in the black suit was less a memory and more of an accepted, horrifying condition of my existence. He was a chronic illness of the soul. His appearances were sporadic, governed by a logic I could not decipher. I could go for a year, sometimes two, without a single sighting. During these periods of quiet, a fragile hope would begin to bloom in my chest. I would convince myself that it was over, that he was a figment of a child's fear that had finally faded with adulthood. I would start to live normally. I would make friends. I once had a girlfriend, Amelia, for 6 wonderful, peaceful months. I almost forgot him. Then, one evening, Amelia and I were walking home from a movie. It was late, the city streets quiet and slick with a fine mist. We were laughing, my arm around her shoulder, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly, uncomplicatedly happy. As we approached my apartment building, I glanced across the street, and my heart seized. He was there, standing in the darkened doorway of a closed bookstore, half swallowed by the shadows. The same black suit, the same pale, featureless face, the same soul-freezing stillness. He had not aged a day. I stopped walking so abruptly that Amelia stumbled. "What is it?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I could not speak. The words were trapped behind a wall of ice in my throat. All the carefully constructed normality of the past few months crumbled into dust. He was not gone. He was never gone. He was just waiting. I stared at him, and the distance between us felt like nothing. It was as if his gaze was a physical tether, pulling all the warmth and joy out of me. "Leo? You're scaring me," Amelia said, tugging on my arm. I forced myself to look away, to look at her. "It's nothing," I lied, the words tasting like ash. "I just thought I saw someone I knew." The lie was thin and pathetic. The rest of the walk to my door was silent, the easy warmth between us replaced by a tense, confused quiet. She could feel the change in me. She knew something was wrong. I tried to explain it away. But how do you explain a shadow that has followed you your entire life? I tried once, vaguely. I told her I sometimes felt like I was being watched. She suggested therapy. We broke up a month later. She said I had a wall around me she could not break through. She was right. The wall was built of his unending, silent scrutiny. After that, I gave up on relationships. I gave up on close friendships. It was easier to be alone. I moved to a different city, a desperate, foolish attempt to outrun him. I found a small apartment on the 12th floor of a high-rise, thinking the height might offer some security. For 3 weeks, I saw nothing. I began to breathe again. I started a new, unfulfilling job in data entry, the repetitive work a welcome distraction. One Saturday, I was returning from a grocery run. The elevator ride up was quiet. I walked down the long, carpeted hallway to my apartment, 12B. As I fumbled for my keys, I noticed the door to the apartment opposite mine, 12A, was ajar. A sliver of darkness. My neighbor was a quiet, elderly woman I rarely saw. I thought perhaps she had forgotten to close it. I unlocked my door, pushed it open, and stepped inside with my grocery bags. I put the milk in the fridge and the bread on the counter. A strange feeling washed over me. A coldness that had nothing to do with the refrigerated air. The profound sense of being watched was back, but it was different this time. It was not distant. It was close. It was immediate. My blood ran cold. Slowly, I turned around and looked back toward my front door, which I had left open. Across the hall, the door to 12A was now wide open. And standing in the middle of the dark, empty apartment, was the man in the black suit. He was not across the street. He was not at the end of a pier. He was 30 feet away. And for the first time, I felt something new radiate from him, something beyond observation. It was a cold, silent, and utter possession. He was not just watching my life anymore. He was in it. Seeing him in the apartment across the hall broke something in me. The illusion of distance was shattered. He was no longer a peripheral horror. He was an immediate presence. I slammed my door, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I slid the deadbolt and leaned against the wood, my breath coming in ragged gasps. For hours I did not move. I just stood there, listening to the frantic beat of my own blood. I did not dare to look through the peephole. I knew what I would see. Or worse, what I would not. The uncertainty was its own kind of torture. The next day, I found the courage to leave. The door to 12A was closed and locked. I never saw the elderly woman again. When I finally asked the building manager about her a week later, he gave me a puzzled look. He told me apartment 12A had been vacant for 3 months, waiting for new tenants. That was when I knew I could not run anymore. I had to understand. My fear, which had for so long been a paralyzing force, began to curdle into a desperate, obsessive need for answers. I bought a series of notebooks and began to document everything. I became the historian of my own haunting. I wrote down every memory I had of him, starting with the birthday party. I detailed the locations, the time of day, what I had been doing, what I had been feeling. I tried to be a scientist, looking for a variable, a trigger, a rule in the chaos. The pages filled with a sprawling, terrifying timeline. The beach vacation at age 10. He appeared right after I decided not to join my cousins in the deep water, held back by a sudden, inexplicable fear. The high school play at 16. He was there the night I was too nervous to deliver my lines properly, my voice cracking on stage. The breakup with Amelia. I saw him that night, standing under a streetlight as she walked away from me for the last time. My apartment became a strange sanctuary of paranoia. I tacked maps to the walls, marking the locations of the sightings with red pins. I spent my nights poring over my notes, searching for a connection. At first, there seemed to be none. The sightings were random, spread across decades and cities, tied to moments of both crushing despair and quiet contemplation. I felt like I was going mad, drowning in my own meticulous documentation of my own unraveling. Driven by a sliver of rationality, I sought professional help. I found a therapist, a kind, patient man named Dr. Finch. I did not tell him the whole truth. I did not speak of an ageless man in a suit. I framed it as anxiety, as a persistent, irrational feeling of being watched, a form of scopophobia. Dr. Finch was understanding. He spoke of childhood trauma, of hypervigilance, of the mind playing tricks on itself. He gave me breathing exercises and coping mechanisms. For a while, I tried to believe him. I tried to believe the man was a metaphor, a psychological construct my own mind had built. It was a comforting thought. It was also a lie. The breakthrough came not in therapy, but on a Tuesday afternoon, while I was staring at my wall of notes. I was thinking about a specific memory from college. I had been offered a small scholarship to study abroad for a semester. It was a fantastic opportunity, one my professors urged me to take. I was excited, but also terrified. For a week, I agonized over the decision. Finally, overwhelmed by anxiety about the unknown, I turned it down. I told everyone it was for financial reasons, but the truth was, I was simply afraid. And I remembered, with a sudden, sickening clarity, that on the evening I made that final decision, I had seen him. He was standing across the campus green, a motionless black figure in the twilight, watching me walk back to my dorm, my future a little smaller than it had been that morning. My hands started to shake. I grabbed my pen and began to cross-reference my notes, not by emotion, but by choice. It was there. It was all there. Every single sighting coincided with a moment of significant decision in my life. Not just the big ones, but small ones too. The day I chose the safer, lower-paying job. The afternoon I decided not to call an old friend I missed. Every time I had stood at a crossroads, no matter how small, and chosen the path of least resistance, the path of fear, he was there. He was not a random specter. He was a marker. He was the silent, unblinking audience to my own cowardice. He was the witness to every opportunity one let slip through my fingers. The realization did not bring relief. It brought a new, more profound, and more personal kind of horror. The discovery of the pattern changed everything. The man was no longer just a source of fear. He was a symbol of my own failure. He was the embodiment of my timidity. Each sighting was a fresh indictment, a quiet, damning judgment on a choice I had made. This new understanding did not lessen the dread, it sharpened it, personalized it. The horror was no longer external. It was a reflection of something deep inside me, and I could not bear it. I decided that my life of passive observation was over. I had to face him. I had to force a confrontation. I chose the location carefully. There was an old, abandoned industrial park on the outskirts of the city, a place of crumbling brick and shattered windows, forgotten by time. It was desolate, empty, a perfect stage for what I needed to do. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that if I went there with the express purpose of making a choice, of forcing a turning point, he would come. One evening, as dusk began to bleed across the sky in hues of purple and gray, I drove out to the park. I left my car by the rusted gate and walked into the heart of the decaying complex. The air was heavy with the smell of damp concrete and rust. My footsteps echoed unnervingly through the silent, cavernous spaces between the buildings. I found a large, open courtyard, littered with weeds growing through cracks in the pavement. And there I waited. This was my choice. The choice to stop running. The choice to turn and face the shadow that had defined me. I stood in the center of the courtyard, my hands clenched into fists at my sides, and I waited for him. The sun sank below the horizon, and the world grew dark. A cold wind whispered through the broken panes of glass, sounding like faint, mocking laughter. For what felt like an eternity, there was nothing. A sliver of doubt entered my mind. What if he did not come? What if this was all in my head after all? But then I felt it. The familiar drop in temperature. The sudden, intense pressure of a gaze. I slowly turned my head. He was there. Standing at the far end of the courtyard, about 100 yards away, partially silhouetted against the dying light. The black suit. The pale face. The absolute, predatory stillness. My heart hammered, but this time, it was laced with a cold, hard resolve. I would not run. I took a breath and began to walk toward him. Each step was a monumental effort. The distance between us seemed to stretch, to become elastic. He did not move. He simply watched me approach. "Who are you?" I called out, my voice sounding small and thin in the vast emptiness. There was no response. Only the sound of the wind. I was 50 yards away now. "What do you want from me?" I shouted, my voice cracking with a mixture of fear and fury. "Why have you been following me my whole life?" He remained silent. A statue carved from shadow and dread. His lack of reaction was more unnerving than any monstrous snarl could ever be. It was a complete and total negation of my existence. I was not worth a response. I kept walking, closing the distance. 20 yards? 10. I was close enough now to see that his face was not just pale, it was unnaturally smooth, like polished bone. There were no lines, no pores, no imperfections. It was a perfect, horrifying blank. And his suit, I could see now, was not made of any fabric I recognized. It did not fold or crease like cloth. It seemed to absorb the very concept of light, a patch of pure void. I was only a few feet away. My fear was a physical thing, a high-pitched scream in my mind, but I pushed it down. I had to know. I had to end this. I raised a trembling hand, my fingers outstretched, intending to touch him, to prove he was real, to force some kind of reaction. As my fingertips came within an inch of the black fabric of his sleeve, he did something. He moved for the first time. He did not flinch or step back. He simply tilted his head, a slow, almost curious gesture. And from his blank, featureless face, a sound emerged. It was not a voice. It was a whisper, a dry, rustling sound like dead leaves skittering across pavement. It was quiet, yet it filled my entire head. And the whisper said my name. The moment the sound touched my mind, the world dissolved. I felt a violent, wrenching vertigo, a sensation of falling and being torn apart at the same time. The crumbling factory, the twilight sky, the man himself, it all smeared into a meaningless blur of color and light. A wave of nausea and profound dislocation washed over me, and I squeezed my eyes shut. When I opened them again, I was sitting in my car, back by the rusted gate of the industrial park. The engine was off. The keys were in my pocket. The sky was dark. He was gone. The confrontation was over. And I had lost. The failed confrontation left me hollowed out. It was not just that I had failed to get answers. It was that the very laws of reality had bent and broken around him. How do you fight something that can edit your experience, that can pluck you from one moment and deposit you in another? The whisper of my name echoed in my memory, a sound that promised not violence, but a terrifying and absolute ownership. I stopped seeing Dr. Finch. What could I possibly tell him? That my psychological metaphor had spoken to me and teleported me into my car? I stopped trying to understand. I stopped fighting. I surrendered. A strange, quiet resignation settled over my life. The man still appeared. but I no longer reacted with panic or anger. When I saw him across the street from my office building, a dark sentinel in the rain, I would simply nod, a small, tired acknowledgement, and continue with my day. He was a fact of my world now, like gravity or the passing of time. The terror was still there, but it was a dull, constant ache rather than a sharp, stabbing pain. It was the background radiation of my life. I grew older. The years passed in a blur of meaningless work and lonely evenings. I watched from my window as the world changed, as friends I once knew married, had children, and grew old themselves. My life remained a flat, unbroken line, a study in quiet desperation. And he was always there, at the periphery, the unchanging witness to my slow, steady decay. He never aged. While my hair thinned and turned gray, while lines etched themselves around my eyes and mouth, he remained a pristine, timeless figure in his perfect black suit. Now I am an old man. I live in a small, quiet room in an assisted living facility. My world has shrunk to these four walls, a window overlooking a manicured lawn, and the faces of nurses who call me by my first name with a professional, detached kindness. My choices are small now. Tea or coffee. The blue sweater or the gray one. But he is still here. Most afternoons I see him. He stands under the large maple tree on the lawn. The other residents do not see him. The staff do not see him. But I do. He stands there, perfectly still, his featureless face aimed at my window. He is not waiting for me to die. I know that now. Waiting implies an end. He is simply observing the process. This morning, the nurse helped me shave. I looked at my reflection in the small mirror. The face looking back was a stranger. A tired, defeated old man with sagging skin and watery, clouded eyes. It was a face I did not recognize, a map of a life I had not intended to live. I saw every compromise, every fearful retreat, every surrendered dream carved into its features. My gaze drifted from the mirror to the window. He was there, under the tree, a stark slash of black against the cheerful green of the lawn. And in that moment, looking from my own ruined reflection to his perfect, unchanging form, the final, devastating truth fell into place. It was not a sudden revelation. It was a slow, cold dawn of understanding that had been rising for 70 years. He was not a demon. He was not a ghost. He was not following me. He was the person I could have been. He was the Leo who took the scholarship and saw the world. He was the Leo who stayed in the deep water and learned to swim. He was the Leo who nailed his lines in the school play, who told Amelia he loved her and fought for her, who took the riskier job, who called his friend. He was the sum of all the chances I did not take, the potential I had allowed to wither on the vine. He never aged because he never lived a life of compromise and fear that would weather and erode him. He was the man I had abandoned, piece by piece, at every fearful crossroads of my life. And his job, his only purpose, was to stand as a silent, eternal monument to the life I had thrown away, and to watch the version of me that was left slowly fade into nothing. I looked at my reflection in the window pane, my pale, wrinkled face a ghostly overlay on the world outside. Beyond my reflection, he stood, still and perfect. Our eyes, one pair real and failing, the other imagined but all-seeing, finally met across the whispering distance. There was no malice in his gaze. There was nothing at all. And that was the most terrifying thing. He was not my enemy. He was my ghost. The ghost of a life I was too afraid to live. And he would be there, watching, until the very last flicker of the man in the mirror went out.